that affects my retina, which basically decreases my field of vision from the outside in. You know,
I feel like I'm acting. Am I centered? Not to be a downer, but the average person with RP, by the time they're age 40, they're considered legally blind. Also, there are no cures or treatments at this time for RP. RP is hereditary, and I got it from my mom. Love you, Mom. It's also pretty rare. Only around 100,000 people in the US have it. I was diagnosed with RP when I was 13 years old, but I didn't start noticing symptoms of it until I was 25. For me, RP is an invisible disability. For example, I trip over things a lot, I miss handshakes or fist bumps, I avoid events that take place at night, I avoid driving in areas with heavy foot traffic, and I just appear clumsier than the average person. I've always kept RP concealed out of fear of being treated differently or not landing video jobs. And ironically enough, working in video production is heavily dependent on your vision. Most sets are dark and have expensive equipment scattered everywhere. So I'm transitioning my focus to video editing, since I'll always likely have central vision. Plus, it's my favorite aspect of filmmaking. So what else? I'm going to quit driving. I can't drive without peripheral vision, and I've already pretty much quit driving at night. It's a simple solution. I'm gonna sell my car and utilize public transportation. Do I look mad the whole video? All right. More specifically, I'm moving to New York City. There I can utilize their public transit and expand my walkability radius. Plus, I know some solid bros up there. Making a video like this really isn't my style, but it does feel great to share this information. I'm very fortunate to have the amount of vision that I do have and to have supportive people
As
around.
someone who went from not even talking to anyone about my visual impairment, retinitis pigmentosa, to now having a podcast where I just spill my heart to a camera about it.
At first sight.
Love at first sight.
Figured out we were vibing and then just like sent it on the podcast, and Four Bad Eyes was
Encourage people
born.
to learn about themselves, know about themselves, what they want for their lives, short term and long term, and then make their decisions about SSI or SSDI from there.
They're there for a reason.
Yeah.
So don't be afraid to use them.
And look at yourselves and really look at what your spouse is doing and how they're overcoming these very challenging obstacles. And how they are as a person. That love and that strength you see in them is way more than anything else that you would get from somebody else who maybe is sighted.
That intro got me pumped up.
This is JoJo, and as you guys know, I do the In-Depth Insight series, and it has been, I want to say, 2-3 months-ish. You guys know that there's a lot going on, and I will explain that in a later live stream. To be quite frank, let's see. How long have we been trying to make this happen, Lance? Like I would say I've been talking to you behind the scenes for like the last 2 years. It's when I covered your podcast, and like we've had like these crazy deep philosophical conversations. And the ironic thing, it has to do with disabilities. So why don't you introduce yourself? As you know, the audience has already, given they've been given a sense as far as your intro. So go ahead and introduce yourself.
Yeah. We've been trying to do this for like probably at least, I'll say minimum 6 months. I'd say where it's schedule, reschedule, and that's fine. I know how it goes. I have to do that all the time with my podcast. This, by the way, this is my first live stream, so I want to put that out there. This is really cool, and that intro made me feel way cooler than I am, so I appreciate that.
That you enjoyed it. A lot of people usually like my editing style, even though I just always get, how did you? I'm like, dude, it's like 3 minutes. It's not a big deal. Like I pre-film, and usually my videos go from like 40 minutes to an hour. Like that's just a regular upload.
Well, I appreciate it because I could tell you were thoughtful in what you picked. So I noticed it. I just want you to know that I noticed the thought put into that, and I appreciate it.
Oh, you're welcome. I'm glad you enjoyed it. So let's start from the beginning. Let's start from your childhood. Okay. You were diagnosed with retinitis pigmentosa, and for the rest of you guys, we're gonna call that RP for the rest of the stream. It's just easier on us.
RP gang.
So you got diagnosed at 12, correct? Because of your mom? Is that
my mom has RP. She's legally blind from it, and as you know, people listening may not know, but it's a recessive kind of thing. So it's inherited retinal eye disease. So I had the possibility. There was a possibility, even though at age 12 that my eyes were not being affected by it, that I still had it.
Right.
So since the medical world was aware that I could have RP, they did checks at a younger age than they normally would have.
Right.
And then they could tell even at age 12 that there was like confirm it, with how my eyes were and all that, and through various tests they did. And my sister has RP, and she's my older sister, and my older brother does not have RP, so they say it's 50-50, basically luck of the draw.
Right. That's basically what I was told as well.
Yeah.
What age was your mom diagnosed, if I may ask?
I don't know the exact number, but it was in her late 30s when she was diagnosed. Yeah. And I should probably figure the exact time of that out now that you brought that up. But yeah, she was later in life, and it wasn't for lack of symptoms. It was just unlike me, like it was on my radar, right? Or at least it wasn't on young Lance's radar. It was on my parents' radar.
Right.
But like they knew to look for something, whereas my mom is the first. So there's no grandparent, no family history of RP. So for her, it was like, she didn't know to look for anything. So she was experiencing all these symptoms, but it wasn't until her later years where she actually got like a name for it,
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
That's just really interesting, because I did notice that in the it's specifically with RP.
Yeah.
The majority, it's like split 50-50, because you have like some families where it's hereditary and there's like a mutation in the gene, like my family.
Yeah.
Because my family, like everybody, like, well, if you're new, you're gonna know, but like the majority of my audience knows that I was a product of incest, and it runs deeply in my family. So we have a lot of like ailments that cause like deformation and stuff like that, because let's be real, you're not supposed to be with your family. But at the end of the day, it is what it is. It's just the makeup of our DNA, unfortunately. And you also have your case where it's like it's not in the family, they don't know where this came from, it's just like a specific type of RP. And I did notice that it is split 50-50. But what's interesting too is that I was diagnosed at 13.
Mm-hmm.
I got diagnosed right after graduation. Yay!
Yeah.
One of my graduation presents.
Makes you really hopeful for the future, doesn't it?
Right? Yeah, I got diagnosed the day of. The doctor called my mom that day, and they waited until I got done with family and friends and all that stuff. And my mom too was in her late 30s, because they were the RP specialist that I saw in Chicago said, okay, one of you has it, because the nature of the way your guys' family is and your ancestry, one of you guys has this. And then my dad looked at my mom and said, "Don't look at me, you wear glasses." And sure enough, they tested my mom. And even though my sister doesn't have it, she's still a carrier.
Yeah.
She's still a carrier, and then you can pass that on to your kids as well.
I think with the way it is, and I may be wrong, but I think my brother's in the clear. I think since he didn't inherit it, I don't think he can pass it on. But you know what? I'll just not.
You have
speak
to look
about
into
this.
you have to look into a geneticist for that specification.
Yeah, and I've personally talked with a gene therapist, but I know my brother hasn't, and so I'll just refrain from talking about that because I truly not 100% on that. So
yeah, I went to a geneticist only because it wasn't just for the RP. Like they discovered after they discovered the RP, they discovered Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, which is what I deal with, and then Kaufman-McKusick syndrome is actually the syndrome that causes everything that's wrong with me.
What's the name of that again? Can you say that again?
Kaufman-McKusick syndrome. So I say MKS for short.
Okay.
That is like what makes me me. That's what I tell people, because I don't allow the disabilities to define me.
Sure.
I've never done that. I have told you that, I grew up differently compared to the average disabled person. Some people call it traumatic, some people call it chaotic, some people call it, again, it is what it is. But another question I have for you too is, how many years did you spend hiding this illness? Like, because I did notice that when I listened to your podcast between now and making those clips and like just going through everything and like talking to you, I know it's a shame thing. Like, obviously with the disabilities of our community, it's meant to be a shame thing because we go through like the world differently compared to the average person, because this isn't a disabled world. This is a able-bodied world. So how many years did you spend hiding or trying to hide this illness? And then where are you at present day as far as like accepting, as far as like trying to deal with everything, as far as like sight loss and all that stuff too, because it never goes away.
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, even in your intro, what you selected, it's like you saw the young, version of me talking about. That's when I like first publicly talked about having RP, and that's when I was 27 years old.
Okay.
And that was me before I had a podcast, and so yeah, a lot has changed since 27. A lot has changed since I was 12. So from age 12 when I was diagnosed to 27 to when I finally talked about it to people, I for sure hid it. I for sure just hid it from myself. Even I didn't like want to think about it, because it didn't affect my vision heavily. There was some diminished field of vision, but not enough to where I needed to kind of look RP in the eye. I could kind of pretend. So yeah, I picked, I'm a video editor. That's my career. That's what I do right now. And I went to film school and I made movies in high school, and I've always been in the arts and visual arts. And so the idea of vision loss paired with, basically I went all in on a visual career. So the idea of vision loss was like the opposite thing I wanted to think about in terms of like the progression of my life and my future. So it made the future very scary for me in the sense of my career. Will I be able to work? It made the future scary for me in the sense like, will someone want to be with me, if I lose my vision? Am I going to have to live at home with my mom? Am I going to be able to be an independent adult? The future just felt very, very, very scary.
Yeah.
And it just caused anxiety. So I just, my like most people do, you're anxious about something, you try to avoid it,
Right.
and that doesn't work, and it took basically RP progressing enough to where I didn't feel comfortable driving anymore. Missing, handshakes like I talked about in the intro, just having all these kind of tangible events happen that are related to vision loss to where I couldn't deny it anymore. Where I was like, all right. I guess it's time for me to figure out what this RP thing is going to be for me. And that's when I made a big move up here to New York City, because there's a subway here. I don't have to drive. I'm a video editor, so there's a lot of work here. So yeah, that's what took me here. And then here in New York City is when I was like, basically decided to keep riding that wave of like telling people about it, like I did in that video. When I basically came out, as I call it, with someone with RP, I was like, hey, everyone, I have this eye condition, you may way to put it. yeah. That's what it felt like, and it felt good, honestly, because I was like, it was something I was holding in and hiding a secret, like only like, serious girlfriends I had, I would tell, or, closest friends and family knew about it. But like, if you were like a coworker, I wouldn't talk to you about it. It was like a closed subject for me. But whenever I opened up about it, I was like, oh, this feels, relieving. This feels kind of nice and everyone was supportive and nice about it. And I kind of wanted to ride that wave more. And idea for a podcast kind of happened. And I thought that was a good idea to kind of explore it and to kind of force myself into continuing to think about it, because I know myself and, I might not have, I know that for a fact, if I didn't have my podcast, I would be years, a decade behind my mentality where it is now. It's just expedited my viewpoints on disabilities, vision loss, everything. So I owe a lot to my podcast in terms of changing my perception of everything. But yeah, and that's what struck me so interesting about your intro that you made, is because you showed young version and then you showed almost like it kind of made me reflect on, oh wow, I've really come a long way, and it's really cool to think about it like that, because sometimes I can get lost in the sauce of like content creation as like how many views did I get? How many downloads am I getting? And how many followers do I have? And man, this takes up a lot of time. And then it's like, but the real thing that I get out of this is what I saw in that intro, was the personal growth and kind of spiritual gain of it, So,
like I said, the whole philosophical aspect that people forget about disability.
yeah, and it's something that I underestimated, and
a lot of people do. Do you feel like our community is progressing as a whole? Because I mean, like, obviously everybody has a different experience, but at the end of the day, because I belong to a lot of different communities. I don't just belong to the blind community. And people forget that. People forget that I'm deaf-blind, not just blind. And then you add, the Ehlers-Danlos, and you add, like chronically ill community, the fatally ill, like there's like, I didn't even realize there's so many freaking labels until on the internet. And the reason I asked this question is because, like, me being on Twitter, me being on, like, joining the conversation as far as Twitter goes, as far as I'm banned on TikTok, to be fair.
Oh,
I'm too real, according to them. And so there, I know that there's a lot of conversation on TikTok as well, as far as, you know, what is going to make us not only push for more awareness, but what is it going to take for us to not only be independent? Because it's kind of a catch-22 if you think about it, because you have a lot of individuals. I mean, the majority of people that I know that are disabled, regardless of that disability, still live at home.
Mm-hmm.
At home, or they have a guardian, or whatever the case may be, right? They're so sheltered to the max of the parents being, oh, well, you're not going to amount to anything. We don't want you to get hurt. We don't want you to hurt yourself. But if a child, regardless of how old that child is, if a child does not get the opportunity to make mistakes, to fall, to whatever, then you're crippling them. You're keeping them in that unfortunately, psychologically, you're keeping them in that childlike mind. So then they start thinking, oh my gosh, I can't do this. Oh my gosh, I'm afraid of the world. Oh my gosh. Like, I see that a lot. And these are individuals that aren't even living at home with the fear that's happening in them. And these are individuals that are independent. So I can only imagine the mindset of individuals that still live at home with the disability and with the way the world is and stuff like that. And an example I use for people too is, which I find hilarious, because when the pandemic happened, we were on lockdown. My state was on lockdown from anywhere from like 3 to like our county was 5 months. We were on lockdown. We couldn't do anything, right? Couldn't go anywhere. And everybody was like freaking out and panicking, and everybody was calling me and texting me. Well, I'm like, aren't you scared? I'm like, dude, I've been on lockdown for my whole life. Like, I can't go anywhere for a ride. I gotta fucking fetch for a ride. I gotta argue with people to get a ride somewhere, to pay rent and to do, you know, A, B, and C. And I get everything delivered. Amazon, HelloFresh, name it, I get everything delivered. So I don't want to hear that, you know, like, welcome to my world. Welcome to the disability world, because I'm not the only disabled person.
Yeah.
Get around, like, welcome. Like, now you guys know how it feels. That's all I got to say. And then they stopped and they took it back to that. Then they started laughing because they're like, you know what? I'm complaining. I shouldn't be complaining. You've got worse things going on. Mm-hmm. I'm sorry. I got a bunch of, I'm sorry. Like, I didn't mean to pry. Like, I'm venting, and I got to understand that. But at the end of the day, we've been doing this. We've been on lockdown. I called it quarantining. I'm like, we've been quarantining for I don't know how long.
No, that's like, a good point. That's a good point.
Right. Yeah.
And, you know, just for full, you know, I'll use transparency because my podcast is called the See-Through Podcast.
Right.
You know, like, I'm not legally blind, as you know, because you hear me talk about it all the time.
Right.
So I'm like in the middle of two worlds. Like, I'm in the middle of the sighted world, and I'm in the middle of, you know, the blindness world. So
do you consider yourself visually impaired?
Yes, I do consider myself visually impaired.
Because I started losing more and more vision. 2016 was the last time I saw my retinal specialist, because they told me that, I thought it was hilarious, because they're like, you have 2 months left to have your eyesight. And I said, you've got to be kidding me. You can't possibly know that. There's no possible way that you know that, because with this disease, it's not a guarantee. Some people are stable, some people completely blind. So you cannot lie to me like that and act like you
I've heard that a lot, actually, from people, and they're like, you have a little bit of time left, and then they panic.
That's BS.
And then they still can see, and it's just like, I don't understand why they would even, I don't even understand the point of saying that.
Right. So then 2 months passed, and then at the time, my ex-boyfriend was like, I don't think you're going blind. I'm like, no, you think?
Well, I don't know.
Like,
did you wait up and look at the clock till midnight? Because that's when it happened. when the clock strikes midnight, it just goes dark.
Yeah, so like, I'm looking at the clock, I'm like, well, I can still see.
Yeah.
Well, then I went back to the doctor, and I'm like, so I don't even know why you said that.
Yeah.
And they're like, we obviously can't give you a timeline, because at the end of the day, we just assumed, because your eyesight is moving really fast. Like, compared to like most people with RP, it shouldn't be at a loss that quick.
Yeah.
Because I went from birth, I was considered legally blind. So at birth, it was like 20/80 was my right eye, so that was like the good eye, and then the left eye was 2200. I was still able to wear glasses. And then,
so were you legally blind with corrective lenses or without corrective lenses? You see what I'm saying? Like so even when corrected, you were legally blind.
But when you're deaf blind, it's just an automatic. You're legally blind. It's an automatic.
Yeah.
Just didn't know what the problem was. So you see,
Sure.
from birth until I want to say until I was 13, they were looking at the optic nerve, because I had a lot of nerve damage. A lot of people with RP, it's common to have nerve damage. Because the retina is attached and the retina is dying. So, but at the by the time they figured out it was RP, still I utilized the cane at a very young age. So I was using the cane at 14. So I had O&M, orientation and mobility, for those of you guys that are, clueless. So I walked with the white cane, but I don't have the typical, see, that's the thing too, is why I'm asking about the progression, because a lot of people don't know Braille. A lot of people are using the wrong cane. They're utilizing the red and white cane. That is to signal I'm deaf blind. People that are blind are supposed to use a all white cane.
Yeah.
So that's where a lot of people are going wrong as well, because I know a lot of blind people that use the cane, they're using the wrong cane.
Well, let me ask you this, because I've thought about that. I would say only someone who's deafblind would know that.
No, see, that's the thing too. Like, people that are O&M instructors, they need to be telling that they know that.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying?
But,
if you're handing a blind person a cane, why would you give them the wrong one?
Yeah. No, I know what you mean. I've just thought about from the sense that, like,
yeah, that's
people in the grocery store aren't like, oh, that's an all white cane, so that must mean this, So I think that's maybe part of it, in terms of interpretation.
It really is, everybody gets a different, like, I always warn people. So, like, if I meet somebody that I've met online, in person, or if I'm meeting people from the first, like, for instance, my neighbors, right?
Yeah.
My neighbors always tell me, oh, well, you can come over anytime and we can hang out, and they want to get to know you, blah, blah, blah. And then I'm just standing there like, I'm trying not to be rude.
Yeah.
Trying not to be rude, but it's like, I can't do that. Like, that's not something that I'm able to do. I'm not like, yes, I walk around like a lot of people see me as normal, right? I don't wear glasses. Yes, I use the cane, but to a lot of people, I don't appear as blind. And I don't know what that is for, like, the sighted people. I don't know where you guys, I still don't have an answer for that. Like, I ask sighted people all the time, like, what is a blind person supposed to look like? Like, seriously, like, can you give me an example? Because I know I'm supposed to look like Helen Keller because I'm deafblind, but what is the example for blind people? You know what I'm saying?
I don't know. I think all you got to do is put a pair of black sunglasses on and look up towards, and tilt your head to the sky with just black sunglasses on.
I mean, I use those outside. Like, I wear, like, because of the severity of the light sensitivity as far as RP goes.
Yeah. Or maybe they expect you to just walk like with your hands out, like you know.
Exactly.
Like you can't feel it. I don't know. I've always thought about that too, because that's a classic phrase, you know.
Yeah. I mean, I just moved in like January, so it took me a while. It took me a while to get acclimated and to adapt and just memorize, because it's quite a maze to get to my apartment. Like I gotta go on the elevator, then I gotta take a zigzag, then I gotta take another zigzag, and then I get to my apartment.
Yeah.
So I had to get used to that without getting dizzy.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's a secured building and it's a nice building, so shit, I'll take it, you know.
Yeah, no, that's
With
awesome.
everything going on right now, I'll take it. Do you feel like not only like do people get like the wrong idea as far as that goes, what do you get comments as far as like when you're with your wife? Like as far as like, 'cause
I think the main comments that I get are like, because I don't use a cane stubbornly.
Okay.
So if we're in a restaurant or something and the waiter is leading us to the table, right? And then they're showing me where the seat is, and then I'm like kind of not picking up on where the seat is. This happened recently. Or there's like a wooden beam structure, you know, in between me and the seat, you know, and like, you know, to anyone else, they would just go right around it, right? And to know where to go. But for me, I'm like, oh shit, because it's a darker, my eyes don't do well in the dark, you know, you know how it goes. And, and you know, the server will just look at my wife like I'm like either really dumb or I'm really intoxicated. Like they almost look concerned, like why isn't he just going to the seat? Like the seat's right there, you know. So it'll be stuff like that, you know, situations like that. But yeah, that's really about as far as it extends, you know, as far as I know that I'm aware of, you know.
And you don't like you don't know Braille, right? You never learned Braille?
No, I never learned Braille. You know.
Do you want to, or do you just want to wing it with the AI?
You know, I just talked to a guest, Sadie Taylor, and she talked about learning Braille at a young age. And to me, it seems like an alien language. It seems like a very difficult thing to learn. And then also, with technology, you know, how it's going, that, you know, maybe I don't think it'll ever be like not usable, but I can see its usefulness going away. Well, I don't know, but yeah, I think if I would learn it, I guess I'll say this: I would only learn it if I had to.
Like, do you travel by yourself, or are you one of those independent blind people that just travels by with other people, or like just by yourself? Because I know a lot of blind people have their preference of when they go outside, like whether they're, you know, by themselves.
Like I said, like I'm not legally blind, so like I have, last time I did a visual field test, I have around between 40 and 50 degrees of central vision. So,
no, I know that, but even visually impaired people prefer to have somebody with them.
Yeah, but I guess with my corrective lenses, I'm
okay.
You know, I don't know. I guess some people do. I guess I know what you're saying. I get what you're saying.
Yeah,
but yeah, I'll go out and do my own thing. I'm not. I just will walk at my own pace or whatever. It's fine.
Like my building, they have like every building is required to have it. As far as like the elevator, I have to use the Braille on it. I cannot distinguish because I'm on the 3rd floor, so sometimes I miss and I'll click on the 2nd floor. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I have to get used to just utilizing that. I have not used an elevator since 2014. That was the last apartment building that I had that had an elevator. So I just have to get used to that.
Yeah, see, that's like a real practical use of Braille. Yeah.
As far as like public use, you know, it's virtually everywhere. As far as like government places and like public places. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So that's why I kept up, like I kept up with it. And, you know, as my vision got worse, I went from like large print to basically having to switch over. And I went to a deaf blind school. So in Illinois, we have the school for the deaf and then the school for the blind. And I had to switch off. I had to go to both. So like during the day, I would be at the deaf school, and then at night, I would be, you know, it was just like a college campus. So I would stay there for the majority of the year, like the school year. So they prepared me first for the RP, and then when I went to the deaf school, like, you know, learning Braille, O&M, that I already knew. But it's just like to enhance your skills.
Yeah.
Especially going into like the cities and like traveling and whatnot. And to be fair, like if it wasn't for that, I wouldn't have traveled all over Chicago. So like the Chicagoland area, the Chicago suburbs, regardless of which way that is, I have taken the Metro, I have taken the L, and I was able to walk and basically use, well, this was when Google Maps was a thing, and if you got lost, you just looked up Google Maps, and then they would like talk to you and tell you where to go. You know what I mean? So
yeah.
That's just how I learned how to travel. So this area that I'm in now, I'm basically like, give or take like 3 hours away from Chicago. So I'm like way at the other end, northern Illinois. So it took some getting used to as far as like not having transportation and having to have like door-to-door service. So you have like a bus that comes out, or like a van that comes out like wherever you need to go in the area, and then they drop you off. You know what I mean? Like it took me a while to get used to that, because I went from doing it myself and getting out, doing it myself, and then had to adapt to something different.
Yeah.
Do you feel like you have a good handle as far as with where your RP is right now? Because it seems like you're pretty stable. Like, I mean, as much as you talked about how much you panicked and how much anxiety it gave you, it seems like you're at a stable state.
Yeah, it does seem like that. And
it seems like you're making it worse than it really is. Do you see what I'm saying? That anxiety and that fear is like,
yeah, no, it definitely makes it.
Yeah.
You know, your reality is like what you think, really. You know, so like, yeah, it seems stable, and I'm kind of coming around to the fact that it might be stable.
Right.
You know, I think for most people, when you hear RP, you hear, oh, you may go blind. You know, that's what you panic about. Okay, I'm gonna lose all my vision.
Right.
But then it's like, you know, my mom, she's, you know, 65, and she can still see. You know, she's not fully blind. She still probably has between 5 to 10 degrees of vision, and can still like look at, you know, pictures on her phone, and like she'll zoom in on them, and it can, you know. So like if I follow like her genetics, you know, I did inherit it from her, then maybe I'll be 65 and still be able to look at pictures on my phone. So like it's like and I'll be completely honest, I'll be stoked for that. You know, I'll be very, very excited if that's the case, and I'll be very thankful for that. And I think that's the key difference is when I was first diagnosed, even the thought of that would cause me to panic.
Right.
But now I'm kind of like, you know what? It's not ideal. Obviously, I'd rather just have perfect vision. But hey, if I can have that for how RP can be, and as I know people with RP who, you know, like yourself, who are, you know, have lost a lot of vision and all that, like in terms of that, I got to keep myself grounded and be like, all right, you're doing good, Lance. You're doing good.
Right.
And you know, and the podcast and all that's more of like a preventative measure for me to learn about how to adapt, so I don't panic at the even thought of being 65 and having to zoom in on a picture. It's like, you know, because for the most part, you know, if you want to think of me as like a normie, as you call them, you know, like I know, but like
I'm sorry, I can't do that.
I know what you mean, but it's like a normie's perspective is anything different than normal is the worst fucking thing on the planet. You see what I'm saying? So I've had to basically rewire, because like since I basically had 20 years of basically pristine vision.
Yeah.
I have the normie mind, whereas someone who is born legally blind, you're kind of been living at this experience, since day one. And so I guess that's part of my process is rewiring my brain to accept my disability.
Yeah. See, that's the thing. That's why I keep telling people that I like whoever I encounter in the blind community. Yeah. That's the thing. I grew up different. I didn't grow. I grew up. Well, I was fearless to begin with. I shouldn't have been. Like, I grew up a tomboy. Okay, so I would be on the roof. I would be climbing trees. I would be skateboarding. I started skateboarding and doing competitions at the age of 9. Like, yeah. I mean, I was doing things that the average disabled person doesn't do. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So because I grew up like that, and I like, it was just in me to be fearless and not be afraid of anything, regardless. Like, people, like my family would yell at me. Like, I'd had like half of the family that treated me like I was a normie, and then I had the other half that was like literally freak out and panic and start screaming at me, "Don't do that! You can't see." I know. I don't know that I can't see.
Yeah.
But
that kind of reminds me of your first question you asked, was like, do you think people are progressing, about like at home and whatnot, the parents and all that? That's a good point, because I basically have my situation. That's all I can talk about. But I've talked to countless people. I've met countless people, with vision loss. And it does seem like if you lose your vision at an earlier age, and this, it's kind of like a no-brainer, honestly, when you think about it. But it's like, it does seem like those people who diagnose at an earlier age or experience legal blindness at an earlier age are more not as into exploring the world as much. They're not into the idea of maybe having their own place, or things like that, just being completely independent, because if your parents are there and your parents are helping you, that's nice. There's not, it's obviously a nice thing, so it's kind of like, all right, well, why would I get rid of this, and this if it makes me feel comfortable and nice? But at the same time, it's like the transition to being into adulthood is kind of complex. If how do you make that leap from, the 13-year-old to the, at what age do you, create your own path? I don't know. And that's something that I've thought about too. And, that's partially, why I moved up here, because I didn't want to have to rely on getting rides and, that, so you can make active decisions and all that. And, and a lot of everything is financial based. So I don't fault anyone if it's financial reasons or whatever, but I do think some of it is more in control than people think it is. Right. So it's complex, per person or per situation. But I do recommend, though, I feel like if it's possible, you should step out of your comfort zone and at least try to live on your own if you can. I know some people's circumstances, they absolutely can't. They need, additional help. But I would recommend that everyone try to, create a life to where they don't need anyone but themselves.
Right. And the thing is too, is that what I tell people too is like, for those individuals, like the very, very rare individuals that the disability is so debilitating that they cannot be on their own, and they don't want to end up like in a facility. You know what I mean? like for those people, I understand. But I always tell individuals too, like, I mean, like individuals that aren't even disabled, the able-bodied community. Like I know a lot of individuals that are, you know, between the ages of 30 and 40, 45, that still live at home. They have kids and they still live at home. And the last conversations I've had with individuals, it's like, it was hilarious because they're like, "You're putting me to shame," and I'm like, "What are you talking about?" And they're like, "You've got all of these issues, you got all these problems, but it's like you don't care, you don't give a shit. You just keep living life, you keep moving forward. You're like, you put me to shame because what the fuck is my excuse?"
No, I really respect what you're doing, especially, you know, you're on your own. And I've had, you know, my last guest, Sadie Taylor, you know, she is the same way. She's, you know, independent and has her own place and works as a massage therapist and was born legally blind. So it's, to your point, you're right. It is rare for someone to be, you know, legally blind and completely independent. And and I hate that. And I hate that that's a thing, you know, and I got to be self-aware enough to know, like, who am I, you know, to tell people what to do? Like, I'm not even legally blind. So like, I'll, you know, take what I say with a grain of salt, but it's just something that I've noticed. It seems like the people, from the pool of people I've interacted with, the people who are more independent, have less anxiety than the people who kind of maybe depend on their family, you know.
Yeah.
It's just something to think about, I guess.
Well, it's really rare.
Very rare, very rare. And
I was with I mean, it took quite an adjustment because I was with my ex for 7 years. And he was I called him my seeing eye Larry because that was his name. So that's what I called him. And I always tell people, like, "Can I borrow your eyes?" Because mine don't work. So that's what I tell people that, you know, are sighted. Like, "Can I borrow your eyes for a second?" And then they'll help me out. But it really took some adjusting because it went from him helping me with certain things. So like if something falls on the floor, I'm like, "Great, that's lovely," because there's no way I'm gonna spot it. There's absolutely no way. So I literally have to like either like get on my hands and knees and find it. Like 9 times out of 10, it's like I'm able to do it because it's like I'm overthinking it. But it's just getting like used to little things like that, of like him, like just he was like a really good describer, because instead of like most people tell you it's right there, like really, like, that doesn't tell me anything. But with him, he was like go straight, go forward, come back a little. Like he literally was that descriptive. And you know, being with someone for 7 years that's, you know, multi-disabled, you just get used to the person. And it even took him time, because like I usually have my entire house blacked out. So I live literally, even though I'm not fully blind, I live like a blind person. So with everything being blacked out, like at night, I don't turn anything on. Like it's very rare if I have like a light on. So I do everything with touch, and like I have like because of the deaf blindness, I have a really, 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 really strong sense of touch. So just able to like cook, clean, do everything without vision and hearing. But I was also taught that at the age of 10 before we even knew what was going on.
Sure.
So,
that's I think having a partner, like me getting married, has been, you know, paired with my podcast and kind of facing, you know, vision loss head on. But like that paired with getting married has like soothed my anxious brain about vision loss so much, you know, and it's like,
I can imagine. I completely get that.
Like, you know, it's really just because I don't know, I can't recommend it enough. Like, and I feel for you in the sense that, I think that's why people are afraid to commit in relationships or even start relationships, because they're afraid, like, even me, I'm terrified, I'm terrified, even though I'm married, it's not like divorces don't exist. It's not like it's not like it's guaranteed, so it's like, I can build all this dependence around this one person, and then there's a possibility that it's taken away. And I think that terrifies people,
Yeah. Cause like we thought it was going to be I thought he was going to be the end all be all. You know what I'm saying? This last year has been rough because, we were homeless. And he had never gone through that. And I've been homeless before because, let's be real, you can't afford shit half the time. Yeah. So it took really a toll on our relationship, and he went through something also within the year, and it's like he never came back. Like, the trauma was so bad that he didn't come back, and I know what that feels like. So I tried to have as much sympathy as possible because I deal with PTSD. So I was just like, and after a while, it got to the point where not only was it toxic, it also got abusive. So for me, it was like, there's only so much I can deal with. I'm dealing with enough as it is. And, with having Ehlers-Danlos, it's a toll on our body enough as it is. So I literally had to tell him, you either need to I don't care if you get help. I don't care like what you have to do, but you can no longer live here. Like this has to be the end, because there's only so much I can put up with. Yeah. And me being already like extremely independent, I knew I was going to be okay. But what's funny too is, like, after this whole thing happened, I had so many like friends and family tell me, "Oh my gosh, what are you going to do? You're helpless." And it's like, why? Because I'm the woman and the man left? Like, I'm confused. Like, I took care of him. I did everything for him. I cooked, I cleaned. I literally did everything for him. And he was 20 years, like, my senior. Yeah. So I took care of him. It worked for us, until it didn't. And for a lot of people, it was like, we didn't know that you took care of him. We thought he took care of it. I'm like, it was a give and take relationship. That's how relationships are supposed to be. But at the end of the day, I was the man of the house because I did everything. Like, I know, like if you ask me to pick something, I can do it. As far as like plumbing, as far as like all of that stuff. And I have maintenance here, but they have to do like the higher stuff. I'm only 5'1". I cannot reach certain heights. So like, I do have maintenance men that are willing to help if need be, right? Yeah. And also too, like, my dad was a mechanic, so if you give me an old car, I know how to fix it. Like, if you give me like a car like 2003 and before, like, I know, like, if there's something wrong with your like radiator, like, I can literally pinpoint it. If you just describe to me what the problem is, I can automatically tell you without you having to. You'd be surprised how many people I've saved money on, like, going to the auto body shop, going to the mechanic, because they'll rip you off. If you don't know what you're doing, they'll rip you off. You know what I mean? I mean, unless it's like
I've been ripped off before.
Like 2003 and above, that's where the cars started being computerized. Then I can't help you because you got to take it to the dealership.
Gotcha.
You got to take it to the dealership. That's where they get you.
100%. They'll definitely rip you off. I've been ripped off tons of times.
Yeah.
The what you said though is kind of a good thing to think about, is having that independence before your partner, because when things went, in the direction you weren't planning, and you are back to being, responsible for you and you only, you can go back to that. So I would advise people, and I've had people tell me this too, don't even start dating until you feel like you got a good grip on yourself and your disability.
Right.
And for me, that's going to look different because I'm losing my vision at this point in my life. So it'll be during my marriage, I will become legally blind. I do know I will be legally blind in my lifetime. I do know that,
Right.
So it's like my wife's gonna have to, you know, adapt with me, and I'm gonna have to learn to use a cane, and she's gonna have to, you know, guide me around and this and that. So I'm kind of not able to have that fearless independence beforehand.
Right.
So, but I am going to try to remember that during the process. So like when I am learning, like I want to learn things in a way that I can be independent, you know, just, and I don't know, it's just something to factor in, you know, and cause yeah, you don't want to be too dependent on someone, you know?
No.
Yeah.
Because if it, you know, things, because a lot of people tell me like, you know, this, and obviously I'm going to be talking about this in like a later on live stream, but a lot of people just are like, I don't know how you're doing it, because 7 years is a long time to be with somebody. And then that was my very first healthy relationship. Prior to that, my relationships were not healthy. And that's just stems from my of, you know, dealing with all of that. And, you know, it's like you're in your 20s and you just do things. You don't realize the effects and the consequences and, you know, so on and so forth. But for me, like a lot of people always tell me, like, we don't know how you're able to do this, because it's a lot. And what I always tell people too is that for me, like, I always look at things, like I always have to look at the silver lining. I just have to. It's just part of who I am. And even though we broke up, he was still the love of my life. And at the day, it's just because it didn't work out, like a lot, like things don't work out in the end. It is what it is. And for me, it's more so, it's really more so, just because the love did not last doesn't make it any less lovely. You know what I mean? Like it's every love story is different, and it's meant to be different. Like some people, like they'll last for like 50 years. Some people, you know, a couple months.
Yeah, the love was real. What you had was real, you know, and that's, you know,
right.
Nothing can change that, you know.
And don't get me wrong, like I'm getting like left and right. Are you gonna go out with me? Are you ready? It's like, dude, don't even ask. Not there yet. Nope.
Oh yeah, you'll know when you know, I guess, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I'd rather, and to be fair, like I understand why a lot of people get fearful as far as like being disabled, because the average person that goes through a breakup, like a really bad breakup, or like they were together with that person for years, it's quite the adjustment, because it took me a long time, took me like a couple months to get used to not sleeping in the same bed with him. Like you have that security, you know what I'm saying? And
it's a whole nother layer, because like you said, he would guide you, you know, help you with things to see. And so it's like not only are you missing the emotional connection, physical connection, but you're also missing like the accessible connection, you know, the accessibility connection of having, you know, a partner. So
people forget that they grieve when you go through a breakup. You're grieving. So I prefer to heal myself. I prefer to just give me time, like let me get like back to the way I was before I met him. Like let me get back to, you know, the JoJo that you guys all love and know, and like things like that. And then like if you know, if it happens, it happens. If not, like I mean,
time is your friend. You know, I've always said that. Time, you know, you felt, and I know you felt this before, is like you've had times where you're like, I can't imagine feeling normal again. But then guess what? You feel normal again, you know, just with enough time. You know, it's just, you know, you just got to stick it out. You know, I've you know, had my moments, and the time, you know, time heals. You know, it doesn't, you know, you may have not to sound corny, this is gonna sound corny, but you may have like a scar or you know, like a visual, you know, your perception may be changed. You know, that moment will definitely shape and change your mind permanently. You know,
Right.
it's not, you know, because now you have new things to think about and analyze, and now you become a new person.
Mhm.
So I don't think you ever become that same person again from trauma or breakups or whatever it is you want to talk about. But it's like,
But you relive it. Like with the severity of trauma that I have, you relive a lot of different things. And
Yeah.
I will get into that in my live stream. Like I was reliving a lot of different things. And the depression hit, like it took a while for it to hit me that he was gone. It took me a while to hit me that, you know, I gotta start all over. Like financially, like how am I gonna add more income? Do you see what I'm saying? Like,
yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah.
Why am I gonna start all over? But it's like I had to pick up the pieces that were like where she left, basically.
Yeah,
You know,
and it's kind of sad if you think about it, because like, you know, not to get too deep or sappy, but you know, you think, you know, something like death or a breakup or something like that, you would think that it would have a more, not that it doesn't impact, you would think it'd have a permanent, and it does have a permanent impact, but you would think that you would feel sadness from it permanently. But your brain's pretty powerful in the sense that, like, you know, with time, it kind of, you'll adapt to it, you know, and you'll find a new normal. You'll still be impacted by it. It'll still be part of your, you know, who you are. And like you said, your trauma, you'll think about it and relive it, but it's not constant. Whereas in those moments where it's fresh, you know, and it just happened, it's like, you feel like it's going to be a constant feeling. And, I've heard, grief and has been described as like that Pong game, you know, like the ball's going back and forth, and every now and then it'll hit like hit your Pong, thing. Right. And then but you don't know when the ball's going to hit it, you know, it's just bouncing around. Right.
Well, if you think about it, having RP is a way of grieving.
It is. Any type of loss. And it's a slow one too. Yeah. It's taught me a lot about myself, and it teaches me, RP has taught me more about myself than anything has, honestly.
Yeah. And before we go, because there's, it's getting time crunch. I wanted to ask you, was it hard giving up the car, driving? That had to have been brutal.
Yeah, it is. And it's kind of like, and see, that's what's funny. Like, you laugh and like, it's funny now, right? And that's the kind of beauty of time. Yeah. Right? Because if you laughed at that when I gave up the car, I'd be like, oh, you're so rude. You're so mean for laughing. But it's like, it is what it is, like you said. And it's like, I gave up driving because I wanted to do it on my terms.
Right. Yeah. I can understand that.
I knew I wasn't going to drive forever, and I'd be driving and a car would appear out of nowhere in front of me. And I'm like, okay. I lived in North Carolina for the most part, in like a rural part of North Carolina.
Yeah.
And then I was living in Raleigh, North Carolina. And then it was more, where I was working was in a more like crowded area with like people crossing the street and stuff. And I just started to and I had to park in a parking deck. So I was just like, it wasn't like small town North Carolina anymore, where, it's no people, there's not even sidewalks for people to walk on because no one's walking. And, and exactly. And it's just regular parking spaces where it's easier to drive.
Yeah.
And when I moved to Raleigh and had this job in downtown Raleigh, and all of a sudden I'm parking in parking decks and there's people crossing in the parking decks, crossing the street, I was like, you know what? Fuck this. Yeah. I'm just going to quit driving because I don't want to permanently ruin my life by running someone over or causing someone permanent health damage or whatever it is in an accident. I don't want to. I can live without driving. I can't live knowing that I harmed someone out of my own I don't want to give up driving kind of voice in my mind. It just seems so like selfish, and it seems so
right.
So I just reasoned with myself about it. So I said, fuck it, I'm done driving, and decided to quit driving, and I moved to New York City. And the great thing about living here is that it's pretty normal to not have a car here. And everyone I know here basically doesn't have a car, and it's easy here. But the only problem is now I'm kind of feel locked into New York City. I feel like if I move out of New York City or anywhere where there's public transit, then now I'm going to be severely, feel that not driving even more. So it kind of, and New York's not an easy place to live. It's an expensive, very expensive city. It's a very fast paced city. It's a lot of things. So there's some times where I'm like, I don't know if I want to be locked into New York City for my entire life. I don't know if I want to be a 65-year-old, using a cane in Manhattan. Like, that just doesn't sound appealing to me, but maybe it's what I have to do. I don't know.
I've traveled to New York. Like, I visited New York, and like to the average disabled person, I always tell people what is it like for someone that's multi-disabled? And I'm like, the best description I can give you is overstimulating.
Yeah, it's very overstimulating. I kind of like it now.
Yeah, like New York City, there's a lot to take in.
Yeah, because I live in Brooklyn.
Okay.
But, I can hop in a subway and I can be in Times Square in under 30 minutes. So it's not like I'm far away. So it's when I first moved, just that culture shock of moving from North Carolina to New York City, that was a big deal.
Yeah.
So I could totally, see why it would, it was overwhelming for me, overstimulating for me, with sensory and visual, I have I'm like self-diagnosed ADD, like everyone else these days. But it's kind of nice that the stimuli is kind of nice for me, honestly, because it's
that's true.
It kind of is kind of nice for me when I'm out, because I don't know, it works for me sometimes. Sometimes it doesn't.
The reason I ask about the car is because as soon as they found out about the RP, it was just an automatic. The doctor said, "I'm revoking your license. We're not even gonna put you in the car." Okay. Yeah. And it sucked because I wanted, my grandmother was pushing. My grandmother was really in denial about the RP, and she had already planned to buy me a PT Cruiser, because that was the cool car back then.
It was.
And she wanted to she already had the money invested and everything, and I'm like, "Don't give me the car." So the only experience I've ever had, I got lucky. I had a really, really, really cool friend back in 2011.
Yeah.
At the time, he had a Lamborghini. It was a purple, and it was a 220, a 2013-ish version. Mm-hmm. And the reason he made me drive the Lamborghini was because he wanted me to get that experience. He's like, "You've never driven a car, and I want to give you that experience." And I just I started crying, because that's the sweetest thing you can do to somebody. That's
very sweet.
And he's like, "Why are you crying?" And I'm like, "'Cause it's so sweet." But I got lucky because in regular cars, because I'm so short, I don't reach the pedal. But because it's a low rider and it's literally at the ground, when you get in, you're able to I was able to reach the pedal. I'm like, "Oh, thank God!" I got really lucky. And I'm like, "Where are we gonna go?" So he drove off, and we were at a parking lot, and it was just there's nothing in literally nothing, not even light posts, nothing. Yeah. And I'm like, "What if I crash into something?" And he looked around, and I looked around too, and he's like, "I think you're good." So I was awesome enough to have that experience. So that's why I asked you, that had to be brutal.
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's
it was brutal for me. It was brutal for me, and I always wanted to drive. So when you're a kid, when you're back then, that was our goal. Any teenager back then was
and that's where I feel. That's where I just feel.
So that was the thing. back then.
Oh, 100%. And that's why I feel like thankful and lucky the fact that I got to drive for basically 27 years. I got to drive through my high school days, my college days. How lucky am I? So sometimes I'm like, sometimes I just don't want to complain because I'm like, if you do the compare game, you're like, but at the same time, like right now, what the driving thing is impacting my mom pretty heavily because she was dependent on my dad for getting around. And, my dad recently passed away. So now my mom is a widower in a rural North Carolina, small town, and can't drive. Yeah. So she's basically, stuck at home and has to call friends to take her anywhere. And luckily she has some really good friends and good friend base. Yeah. It's not an ideal situation. And that's just the reality of most Americans with a disability or vision loss. Like I, come at this from a unique perspective of like, I was able to pull moving to New York City off. Most people can't do that, but I guess I like being, real, but my mom's a good example of, what, the reality is for most people. So the not driving thing, I may brush it off and be like, yeah, it's fine, but like in reality is it's fucking brutal for most people. And it really hinders a lot of people's lives and removes independence for, that's the main thing. People take it for granted and they drive cars, and they don't even think about it. I drive everywhere, to the grocery store, to work, to your friend's house, to your mom's house. Oh, it's like my mom can't see anyone unless they drive to her or someone comes and gets her, or she's in that age where like she's afraid of Uber, and she's afraid of like grocery delivery, like any sort of new thing. She's just like, I'm not doing that. So it's like she doesn't do any of those like digital services that could assist her, and like, so it impacts her, and I see that with her a lot. And but I've always kind of looked at my mom as a reference. So even when my dad was alive, I didn't like that she was relying on him. So I was like, I don't want that for me. And and it caused me anxiety just seeing that as a son.
Right.
And that's part, that's kind of the, impetus and drive for me to move to, New York, so I'm the kind of person who's observant. I watch what my mom did or didn't do. And then I was like, all right, well, I'm not going to do that. I am going to do that, but I'm not going to do this. And that's kind of how I still am with my interviews and all that. It's like, well, I like your perspective on this, but I don't like that, Right. But yeah, my that's just kind of how it is in terms of, how. So I'm very fully aware of how driving impacts people for sure.
And then the last question I have, and if you don't want to answer, like I completely get it. Do you have a backup plan in case things don't work out as far as your editing job? So you work for Viacom, correct?
Yeah, I do. I work, well, I guess technically now it's called Paramount Plus.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's Viacom. So yeah, I edit promotional content for Paramount Plus, like TV shows. Like the main one I've been working on is called The Challenge. It used to be
I've been watching that since it started.
yeah.
Every season.
So like, I don't edit the TV show. I'll edit like YouTube content, like the fun kind of like meet the cast or 10 crazy things that look out for on this upcoming season, and then I'll make it format for like social media and stuff like that. So it's a fun job, like my goal is to eventually like edit show, like more of the like actual show side versus the promotional side. But yeah, that's what I do. And a backup plan, I don't have any backup plan, to be honest with you. Like,
The reason I ask that is because, well, I'm asking you that because you want to go more towards like the fear of, what if I do go blind? You know what I mean? So your brain kind of
that's a very valid.
That's just your anxiety talking. That the what ifs. You know what I mean?
And I think I've been getting better at that because I'm like, you know what? As long as I have a good chunk of central vision, I can make editing work. And I used to shoot video like.
Right.
For like a decade, I was a videographer and video editor. So I scrapped the whole camera thing because I was like, can't do that long term. Guarantee you that. Can't do that long term. But the editing thing, I can maybe, make my screen a certain way, enlarge text, enlarge the screen, or
right.
a couple monitors, and learn keyboard shortcuts and all these things. And so I'm like, maybe I can make that work, with enough adaptation and
right.
So editing is kind of why when I say I don't have a backup plan is because I really want editing to work. And I'm the kind of person who I can't just do anything. I have to want to do it. So if you tell me, oh, well, this job is more stable and this one's be a little bit better for you, I'm like, all right, but I want to fucking jump off the roof at the end of the shift. So that's not going to work for me.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I get it.
So that's how it is. So, I don't have a backup plan. It's probably silly not to, but that's just how I am, just being kind of hard-headed.
Yeah.
And the podcast is something that I would love to bring me income. Right now, it makes me lose money, which is not good. But like I said, I get like the spiritual, payments of that,
That's what you get paid for.
The growth of the soul, but of course I'd love to get my bank account, I like to grow that, that's so, but like, I don't make any money doing the podcast. So when I started, I didn't think I would either. But then like, the more I've done it, the more I'm like, you know what, there actually is like an industry of this where you're not going to be like a millionaire. You're not going to be loaded from it. But like, I would at least like to, have the podcast be like some source of secondary income,
Right.
So maybe that'll grow into something, So I don't know, but it's still all visual related. It's still all editing related. My podcast I have to edit that, and
right.
So, but none of my plans involve anything different. I guess. There's a quote. It's like we suffer more from imagination than we do from reality.
Yeah.
And I've always liked that one. So, you're going to think about everything that can go wrong.
Right.
But how many times does it actually go wrong? And,
exactly.
So I have confidence in myself that if something does go wrong, I will be able to pivot. But for the time being, like, I'm just trying to enjoy my life. Like, I'm trying to soak in what I can see, enjoy my work. I'm lucky that I have a job that I enjoy. Right now my life is good, and I need to enjoy that because it might not always be good, So it's like, if you always are thinking, what's going to go wrong? What's going to go on? What's going to go wrong? What's going to go wrong? What's going to go wrong? You're not in the moment. You're not truly present in the current day. And I'm just trying to be more like that because I feel like I've wasted so much of my life already just being nervous. What's going on? What's going to happen? And I can't predict this. And it's just, I'm mocking myself, but it's like, it's just like sometimes you just got to exist,
Right.
And actually, there's a difference between live and exist. I say some people are existing but not living, right? I want to live, I don't want to just be, alive. Yeah, my heart's beating,
right.
My lungs are breathing, but like I have no aspirations, nothing that gets me excited, nothing's doing anything for me. I want to be living, experiencing things, smiling, you know, feeling fulfilled. You know, you don't just feel fulfilled from sitting around all day and worrying.
Right. Well, I'm glad that you basically have gotten to that point where you've adapted. That's all it comes down to. You've adapted. And I fully have faith that if, you know, your vision does slightly get worse, maybe like progressively, maybe in my case, instantly, I do have faith that you'll be fine. Like, you're just overthinking it. That's all it comes down to. Yeah.
And some people, I feel like, and I appreciate you saying that, because I believe that you know what you're talking about.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So for you to say that means a lot. So I appreciate that. Whereas I know what you mean by that, though, because some people you're like, I don't know if they would be able to handle it.
Right.
You know? So I appreciate the fact that you think that I could, because I think that sometimes when I meet someone, I'm like, they couldn't handle this shit. You know, they couldn't handle it. You know,
I always tell that to people that like want to judge me. I always tell people like, you know, like, you shouldn't be doing this or you shouldn't be doing that. And then it's like, you try it. I'll trade you. I'll trade your life. I'm pretty sure your life is peachy keen compared to mine. I'll trade you. And then you tell me how to do my life. Okay. So that's what I always do.
Yeah. That's a good point. I bet you they shut up, you know?
Yeah, exactly. Any questions for me before we go?
I guess I'll say you leave the best comments, because your comments are very thoughtful on my videos, and it's nice to have interaction, because sometimes when you're doing all this remotely, right? You know, I know you're having live interviews and I interview people too, but you don't get much, at least for me, I don't get much audience interaction.
Right.
So like, sometimes I feel like I'm talking to my wall in front of me, you know?
Yeah.
Like, so sometimes it's like, all right, when like your comments, like sometimes I'm like, okay, someone's actually fucking listening. And not only are they listening, they're like interpreting it and providing deep insights, you know, to what my episode's about. And I'm like, somebody gets it, and that's just a good feeling. And it keeps me going sometimes. So I just want to say thank you for being a listener, and thanks for inviting me on. And
absolutely.
Hope you keep commenting.
The best advice I can give you, as far as like, I've been I've been on YouTube since 2015, off and on since 2015. And the best advice I can give you is to not worry about the numbers. I know that's hard for a lot of people. It's hard for average people that just don't have a care in the world and don't have to do it. You can't focus on. You have to enjoy what you do. You cannot focus on the numbers, because the minute you focus on the numbers, that's the minute that you lose sight of what you're doing, and then that's your main focus, and then that's all you complain about in life. Like, I see it all the time with content creators that, you know, their numbers aren't high, blah, blah, blah. That's true for everybody right now because of what the state of where we're at in the internet. So it's not just you. Okay, so I know you feel alone in that aspect, but it's not just you. You'd be surprised how many like male podcasts that I listen to. You guys don't get the upper hand. This is why I do what I do, as far as like interviews, as far as like speaking, like, because I'm not a feminist. Okay, so this is why I do what I do, because men don't get the upper hand. We, like, women get more views. Women get more interaction as far as like any type of social media, and women forget women forget about that. Because we have the upper hand, I feel like we need to help our men.
It's a weird time to be alive. It's a great time to be alive. I wouldn't pick any other time to be alive, but yet it's strange, you know, trying to be a creator and you know, in this weird politically correct space and world, and everything. Everybody wants to focus on, you know,
that's
gender, race, et cetera, et cetera. So it's just like, sometimes it's like, I know what you mean. So I appreciate you saying that. And I agree with you. And and I definitely focus on the numbers too much.
I can tell.
And it does get under my skin, but I'm about to make some changes to the podcast that I think that's going to make it more healthy for me, you know, in terms of how I treat it. Because I think I've been going so hard on it, the podcast. So when you expend so much energy into it, so much effort, you expect a return.
Right. Yeah, but that's why you have to enjoy it. Enjoy what you do, because if you're putting that much effort into it and not focusing on the numbers, what does it matter? You know what I'm saying?
So what I plan to do is, you know, I won't say it here because I'll saving it, but like I'm making some changes because I gotta make it fun again. Just being honest.
Right.
Yeah.
Just figure it out. That's all I can tell you.
Yeah. It's still fun. Don't get me wrong. It's still fun, but it feels almost like a
job.
Like a job. It's like I took on another job, you know. So
exactly. A job that doesn't pay.
Fun. A job that takes away money, actually.
Yeah. That's part of having a brand, having a business. You have to put in money to get money. You see what I'm saying?
1,000%.
I was an entrepreneur. I'm still an entrepreneur, but I, did public speaking. I did, support groups. I did all kinds of things, different things. And it's literally that mindset. You have to put in, it has to be joy. It has to be something you're passionate about, because if not, it's not going to work. And then it's not good for your clients. It's not good for the people that you're trying to attract to your brand.
Yeah. And the problem that I was facing wasn't like a lack of passion or interest, because I definitely have the passion and the interest. Like I love doing this. It's just
just don't get defeated.
It's more of a structure issue of how many episodes, when do I deliver them, backing myself into a corner where, I feel obligated to make content, because it's like, well, I said I'd have an episode out Sunday, so I got to have an episode out Sunday, and then it's like, so then sometimes it like quality control goes down and all this stuff, because you're just more of just checking a box versus like making the best product and things like that. So, so yeah, it's more of that, like that, that kind of thing. It's like, would be the reality of it. Would you say you can tell that I focus on that?
As far as like, I can tell when you're being defeated. Like I have like a really, really strong sense, and I can read people easily. Mm-hmm. So I can tell, like, on the days that you're defeated, I can tell that on the days that you're focusing on numbers, you're focusing on, like, I can tell you're frustrated. I can hear it in your voice when you do the podcast.
That's
when
awesome.
You're by yourself, I don't think you realize when you're by yourself, I can tell you're defeated.
Or the solo ones?
It's called a burnout. Like that's where you're like, well, I feel obligated. I feel like that's a start of a burnout. You want to step away from that, because it's more, you have to take care of your mental health, because that's where the burnouts come from. You're exhausted.
Yeah. I definitely feel burnt out, and that's why, like I said, I'm going to make some changes.
But you gotta make a change.
It's interesting that you pick up on it. Again, it's like I don't have that much feedback from the audience, so it's like
I'm really like you say you're observant. I'm extremely observant. Like I can read people easily. I've always been that way. And even if it's somebody I don't know, technically we don't know each other.
That makes me scared. I'm like, oh shit, she can read my brain.
Like I've talked to you for about 2 years, but we really don't know. You know what I'm saying? You got to meet in person with somebody.
True.
Yeah. So.
Well, That's interesting that you picked up on that. But it's good to know.
I do that with a lot of people. People like just like you just asked me. You'd be surprised how many influencers, content creators, how many actual YouTubers will message me. I do this for a living. I'm a mentor. I do this for a living. So people ask me for my advice all the time. So
Well, I believe it.
Like that, it's just a matter of figuring it out. If you need to take a mental break, or you could figure out a way to incorporate self-care while doing your editing, that'll help too.
I think the problem with, since we're talking on the subject, and this will be the last thing I'll say, is it gets hazy. The lines get real hazy because I edit for my job. So then it's like, all right, time to edit again. you know, so it's just editing. And it's like, you know, for me, it's like, sometimes I think it's more of a, not a burnout from the project. It's more of a burnout of editing.
Right.
And being in my chair, staring at my computer screen. You know, it just like, that's kind of where I think the burnout lies. Not like, oh, I'm burnt out on podcasting and the disability community and talking about, I'm not burnt out on any of that. It's more of just like, oh, I guess I got to sit here for another 6 hours, as you know, because it's really time consuming. So it's like, all right, I guess I'm sitting down for another 6 hours after I've already sat down for, 8. So, all right, this is a good way. This is how I spend my life and my time. Cool. You know,
but it's understandable because that's what you do for a living. So when you come home, you want to break away from that. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah. And see, that's the thing. I work from home, so it's all in the same place.
Right. A lot of people do that. A lot of people have that problem, depending on what they do for a living. So it's just a matter of figuring that out and like trying to basically balance that out.
Yeah, I got to figure something out. Yeah, and like I said, I'm gonna make some changes. So, but
so hopefully I can be on your podcast and we'll flip the switch.
Yeah, well, I'll definitely make that happen. Yeah,
like
I'm always gonna do interviews and everything. So
yeah, so if I were you, I would look at my content. If you have any questions, as far as like, because I'm pretty sure you're gonna come up with questions and ask for advice as well. Being on the podcast, so I look forward to that whenever you figure that out.
Well, yeah, work with me on right now is a weird time. So, but yeah, it'll as I figure some things out, like I was just talking about. So, but yeah, I'll definitely have you on.
I'm extremely patient. Whenever you can, whenever you want to do that, just you got.
And as you know, I'm very patient.
Right, like you got me on Instagram now, so.
Yeah, because we've been trying to do this for a while. So, well, I can't see if anyone has been messaging me. So, it was fun doing a live.
I mean, however you want to do it. Well, we are still live, just so you know. But however you want to do it, as far as.
No, I was saying like just in terms of this is just interesting doing a live interview. So I think thanks for having me on.
It's up to you.
And I'm not gonna do live, probably not. You're too controversial. You've been banned from TikTok. I can't have that on live. I don't know what you're gonna say.
Well, I haven't been banned on YouTube, so what does that tell you?
Yeah, there you go.
As much as the stuff I talk about, like if you look at the first year, it's some heavy stuff, and I was surprised I was still on YouTube. Let's just put it that way. So
I love YouTube, and if YouTube's listening, just know that I love you. Don't demonetize anything. I'm pretty safe though. I don't have to worry about it. But it's cool that they haven't done anything for your stuff.
Yeah. Well, I'm gonna let you go, and I'm glad that we did this finally. It took forever.
Yeah.
And those of you guys who are still here, and I know that a lot of you guys are going to be preferably in the replay game because just how you guys are.
Yeah.
Just be on the lookout for my next live stream that is more than likely will be this weekend. So it's going to be a lot of crazy shenanigans that's going on right now that I have to basically catch up with. And hopefully you guys enjoyed this stream. And if you guys are at all interested in hearing either Lance's story, or if you guys want to listen to the podcast, everything is linked in the description below. So you have his merch, you have his socials. So he's a pretty cool guy to talk to if you guys are ever interested. And I will see you guys soon. And well, take care, Lance. All right.
Thank
Bye.
you so much for having me on. Appreciate it. It was a lot of fun.